All right. Um. Call the meeting to order. It is June 19th for the Williston Conservation Commission. Do we have any public comment today? Right. Hearing none, let's roll on over to the minutes from the May 15th meeting. Any comments on the minutes?
Forgot to change the top of that. Actually, it should be
June 5th. Yeah. Boy, May 15th seems like a long time ago.
I can't believe it's already the middle of June, honestly. All right, let me share this.
There was one thing on there.
Oh, I'm really slow.
Won't let you get.
No.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Connection issues is
We are also having some connection issues. Seems that the meeting laptop is okay, but mine is slow. So
I'm trying to understand the outcome. Do a request for qualification, and is there, I'm just trying to pluck out some of the things from the minutes here. Are there specific things that we're gonna make sure are included in the RFQ?
we talked about the RFQ, and we talked a little bit about the information that we share with the contractors, which is, I think, consistent with what we have been doing.
Mhm.
The other topic we talked about that I think was important was just the pricing. And specifically. Fixed rate pricing. Helpful. The whole conversation is helpful too. The outcome for pricing is to continue at fixed rate pricing for now. But an alternative that
Fixed rate being some cost per acre, or
no,
okay.
a fixed rate from the contractor before we sign the contract. So they fixed the Knob Hill that port, and they did go over a little bit, and they just said, this was our agreement.
Yeah.
It happens, but
Oh, wow, okay.
yeah. But so what Dave was talking about was kind of more of a tiered t-shirt sizing was what Reed's example was. That sort of pricing.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was especially clear if we would, I concluded that we would stay with what we're doing right now.
With the fixed rate.
Yeah, just try to be including like our public works department does for engineering fees.
Okay.
yeah, that like I said, I threw that idea out. Shouldn't make any changes at this time.
All right, thank you. Okay, so town plan. June.
7, if you could go to 4.7.
Got an
Okay.
extra R in Gary's name.
the purpose of HDA, or was it the contractor?
You're right, it should say contractor. Or the bidding contractor, or,
Right.
yeah. I know we talked about more context for them, and Andrew did share that, and I couldn't see if it was. Andrew did share with, explains why we're requesting an HGA. What are the
Mhm.
features of the property that have led us to ask for that, as well as the overlays. Uh, so
Does that answer your question, Laura?
Oh, yeah, I thought it was contractor, yeah.
Anything on part 5 of the midline review? Business? All right, may I have a motion to? Gary, I think I heard. All right.
Yes.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, so that brings us to the ERF outreach discussion. Okay, I'm just coming back from a very late night trip back from New York. So what are we talking about with this? I don't really have my brain on conservation commission mode yet.
That's okay. It's a good question. I was going through that last meeting with the meeting before. We had I think a good conversation then, and we talked a bit about different PowerPoints that we have and some outreach for mainly, I think, neighboring towns was kind of a theme that I
Yeah,
got
okay.
to try to understand better what other towns are doing. And then it seemed like also to maybe have some sort of material together for the next Wild About Williston
Mhm.
when that time comes. Might be it will be a common theme this meeting from me, so I'll just get my excuses out of the way right now. The last couple of weeks have been a whirlwind. We just had Hannah start with the town last Wednesday, and between onboarding and like floor cleaning that we had in here, I don't know where the weeks have gone. But yes, so I have the presentation, look through those. Let's see. There's one other
You may read, yes.
Yeah, I think even without any activity on your side, Andrew, I think we're in a better place. So Laura shared her talking points that she had prepared relative to the prehistory timeline, and then the natural history of the region timeline, and then I also went out. I took, how I use that Prezi presentation that's more visual for the presenting. I took that and those notes we had, Eric, with like the yellow highlighting in them with our talking points, and I just said okay, we can't make the slide get some more context into the slides so that somebody could flip through it and be like, oh, okay, I kind of know what they're talking about here. And gonna present it. It take me so much of the notes. So that was the idea. Oh, and it's PowerPoint slides so that we can take places from there.
Our meeting might drop here, just
Cool.
FYI. I have a not responding error message for my
It
folders right
I
now.
was gonna say, would it be helpful if I log in and you
Or
give
yeah, or
me-
if you make me a presenter, I could present. Too.
Just got it. Let's
Okay.
share here. All right, so read here if you were.
Yeah, so this is, it'll look like the Prezi because it's just screenshots of each slide location where whatever each frame within the presentation. But so here on Why Are We Here, I just added in the answers to narrating. And then if we keep going, this is where Laura's notes come in on the next one.
Here it
Cool.
comes.
We're getting there.
It's like a
So it's a little bit small to read, but it should be high enough quality that if we have to zoom in, it would show up.
Okay.
I heard thing available that any of us can take to another town and just share what we've done here
Yeah.
in town and kind of make, I think, once we get down to the last couple slides.
Yeah.
The end result here of the effort, or not the end result, but the end goal rather.
Yeah, and the one piece that 24, we now know our funding up the impending fiscal year, so we need to update our
Yes.
chart. But the rest of it is in there now. And I added some directions on one of the slides on where to get to more information. So I think it's the next one with the if keep going a little bit further anyway, if it scrolls on the one with the significant wildlife habitat areas as well as our prioritization map, there's information.
Oh.
It just tells you where to go on the town website. So it says go to the town website, go to natural resources or whichever section to find out more. And this is where we need the chart updating. I added the tier 1, tier 2 legend for the SWHA map and things like that.
Okay, awesome. Andrew, can you share this link with us? I
Yeah,
can
the link.
probably-
Yeah,
Yeah.
the link that's a read only. So you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome to pull it up.
There it is.
Is
I have
it worth it to
Okay.
think about posting it on the town website so that that anyone could look at it, or that it's like
Yeah.
more easily shareable? Just thinking like maybe it's cool for people to be able to discover it also.
Yeah, if you're happy, I mean, if the team is happy with it, then I think it could go on the website. I felt like it's still a draft until everybody saw it. So I want the chart updated with the current funding.
Yeah,
Totally.
But
Which-
yeah,
which the current fund, the last budget had ended up with what, 40,000
yeah,
on it?
40,000 for the upcoming fiscal year. Yeah.
So Reed and Kim are kind of getting at the question that I have, and it seems like the discussion at the last meeting was about having maybe one PowerPoint. Gary had suggested, I think, actually having a single PowerPoint that has all of this information combined, and part of that too, Eric, you had asked about a different presentation, and I think I know.
Yeah,
Prioritize that we discussed at the last meeting.
Shouldn't be public because people feel like something negative about the fact that like their parcel is highlighted by the town for some reason and they don't know about it. But it seems like the previous one is like, that's great information for anyone.
yep, I agree.
So this is posted on the website right now,
Okay.
just FYI.
But it's kind of buried, right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
everything on our website.
It's hard to stumble across it unless you're really looking for it.
It is. But yes, it's with, at the last meeting, we discussed Reed was talking about the document that goes through how that prioritization was done. And it's more. It gets into the weeds on the analysis of it. And that this is all on one page on our website. And that I think dates back to Melinda's time as conservation planner.
So we've got, what do we have here? We've got about a half hour left here to talk about this, right? I have until 8.
Mhm.
So what do you all think will be the best use of our time on this topic for the next half hour?
Well, one of my thoughts was when we talked with Stan, he's still planning on coming, Andrew?
It's coming at 8,
Yes.
at 8.
Yeah. So when we talked with Stan, one of my thoughts was we have a lot of materials on different topics related to this. And one of the things on our list was help with creating better outreach materials around the ERF as well as around our conservation work and successes and plans. So I was interested to hear whether that was a topic that was interesting to the classes he was speaking with, because if students would be interested in tackling it, then I felt like we're at a point where we've got a number of good resources, and we also know where we could get additional information if we needed to, if a class was interested in coming up with a plan on kind of how to merge them together or how to present them to the public in a way, to Kim's point, that is approachable and not threatening, for instance, to landowners who show up on a prioritization map or something. That was my thought.
All right, so we've got. We'll talk with Stan about how to shape this into something that might be of interest to his students.
That and then the other half is, Andrew, I don't know if you've had any conversations with other towns, but it seems like it would be good to find out whether neighboring towns would like to just do a single event where maybe we invite all the neighboring towns to come hear what we've been doing, or whether we want to kind of shop it around and send somebody to the different conservation commission meetings in neighboring towns.
So the first part of your question there, I actually did talk at the Champlain Valley Conservation Partnership meeting. That was just after our last meeting. And it was really nice. We had an open agenda, and I took up a bunch of the time for the meeting, and we just talked about what we wanted to talk about, so that was great. The only representatives there were from South Burlington, Heinsberg, and Charlotte. And so we had a pretty surface level conversation about what those three towns are doing with habitat disturbance assessments and ERF funding. I can speak a little bit to what their responses were, but I think that there was interest too on having a more in-depth conversation in the future. That partnership does not include some of our other neighboring towns like Richmond. I don't know if Essex is involved. But I think that's a question for me is, you know, we have these large borders with towns that aren't at that meeting, so that's a question. I can go through if you want, just what each town said, but
I guess I don't know about everybody else, I'd be curious to just hear the general reaction or feedback. But I would like to take, before we're done, like take like 10 minutes and just try to think about next steps that we want. We have this potential CVU work, so I want to make sure we have our heads wrapped around that. And then other directions we might go with this, if we want to try to do another Wild About Williston event or hold off or whatever, but yeah.
so
I also would like to hear like the general report out from those towns, but I totally agree with you, Andrew, that the town, like Richmond and Essex both would be towns that I feel like we would want to understand what they're doing, and especially Essex, we have historically shared information with Darren. I don't know if he moved out of that role at all, but specifically about our ERF and how it works. And so like I don't know, just coordination with those towns does seem important.
All right, well, let's hear what the high level summary was from your conversation with these towns.
so South Burlington is we got a slightly different structure. They do have a land trust in town that is pretty involved. And then their public works department, I think, does more for work on managing land and some of their conservation work. So they do have a priority list. It's from an Arrowwood study. And they basically have a list of the top 25 parcels that they, you know, want to conserve the most. And John Bassange is the representative from the land trust that comes to the meetings, and he was talking about how they had done outreach to those top 25 parcels. And he just said that, you know, they sent them a letter that was from the land trust. Hey, we're interested in land conservation for your parcel. We have this priority list. The goal, I think, similar to what our discussion has been, was to not be threatening, but more just, hey, we want you to know that we're here and like here is our contact information, etc. He said that the response from that was minimal. Yeah. Just, you know, thanks for reaching out. We're not interested, or just so I think that was interesting based on our conversations about outreach, and maybe talking with them a little bit more would be beneficial. For Heinsberg, they talked about they also have a land trust, and most of their open space funding is through the land trust and not through the town. They do not have a prioritized list or any structured outreach associated with the town. But they do have that. It's a very small land trust without a whole lot of money, but their approach is that they have the relationships with people in town. And so their goal is to be very in tune with what's going on in different families, that sort of thing, and to be kind of have their ear to the ground. And then when it comes to the question of funding, deferring to some of the larger land trusts in Vermont. Reed, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, more like a comment. I was having a daydream the other day, which is when I usually have good ideas and then forget to write them down. And so I just wanted to share it for the notes. One of the ideas that I had was, I had two ideas. One was a survey that could go out to potentially all landowners. Maybe it's something that goes in the mail and it has a QR code on it that people can scan, or they can go to a website to fill out the survey to just ask them what their sentiments are about what they hope happens to their land in the long run, to give us an idea of, who's thinking of wanting to see their land conserved or expecting that they want to, sell their land or whatever someday. And that would give us like a statistical level understanding, even if it was anonymous, or people could optionally put in their information or something. And then another idea I had was for a decision tree that could walk a landowner through what their options are for conserving their land. So like, you know, two options of like, I plan on continuing to live on my land for an extended period of time, or I know I need to make a decision soon about what to do with my land. And then based on that, then it flows down into, okay, well, if you want to stay on your land, do you want to continue to own all your land and control all your land? Or do you just care about controlling your, the area where your dwelling is? And different things like that. So like a decision flow that landowners could use to kind of explore the different options, and then it could end with like next steps to take. Please reach out to Andrew to start a conversation if you want to have, discuss options around purchase of land, or if you want to do some conservation stuff on your own but keep control of your land, here's some resources you could use to better steward your land, whatever the outcome of the flow is. Those are two ideas I just wanted to share.
That decision tree sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of.
Someone has a hand raised, just a note that I raised a hand, but so did somebody else, just in case people don't see.
It was me, Kim. I think it's you now.
Oh, it didn't go down. I can only see one. Go ahead, Eric.
Thanks, Cam. Yes, I like the decision tree idea. That's really interesting, and makes me wonder if there is if there are groups out there that have already created something similar that we could beg, borrow, or steal from before creating our own. But yeah, I really like that idea as a
It
resource.
also seemed like the level of work that students at CVU might be able to do. Like, here's a ton of information, create a decision tree that we can review and finalize.
Yep.
There's a group at UMass Amherst called the Family Forest Research Center, which is a collaboration between UMass and the US Forest Service, and it's headed up by this guy named Brett Butler. And they've done a ton of work on forest succession planning among what they call family forest owners. Sometimes people say small scale forest owners. They're basically just individuals who own forests and they're not managing them for commercial logging. And there's like all kinds of theoretical frameworks around how people plan for bequest and other succession models. And they've done like tons of research on like, is it different between women and men? And is it different between like cosmopolitan landowners versus rural landowners? Like tons and tons of work on sort of like the drivers of succession planning and how people make decisions. So to Eric's point, not that like the specific decision tree might have been made already, but that like we actually know a lot about what motivates succession planning among landowners in New England, and they use their data points are from the US Forest Service FIA data, which is forest inventory analysis. So they've been like the same plots and the same landowners for like, I don't know, since Forest Service started FIA. So that's all to say that there's just like a ton of research about the motivations on this, and it's very, Brett's team is very New England specific. So I really like this idea, but I would want us to look at what already exists and like what is already like a pretty safe assumption based on pre-existing research. And then the other thing that I'll say is that I have multiple grad students doing survey work with forest landowners in Vermont and New York. And I'll just say that like survey fatigue is real, and it's like pulling teeth to get anywhere near a response rate that would be statistically valid. And so I would just want to think really hard before we do this, because like it's like in normal social science survey work, you need 30% response rate to be able to say something statistically valid, and like we're like incentivizing the heck out of people to get to like 15 even. So it's just the reality of like people get 1 million survey requests now. So I just wanted to make those 2 points, that like there's a ton of work on like that already exists on this topic, and surveys are hard.
That work sounds really interesting, Kim. Thanks for bringing it up. Did you capture that in the notes, Andrew?
I also like
UMass.
we could invite them to come to a meeting. I know those folks pretty well. If we wanted to be like, how would you do this in this town?
Oh, the UMass Family Forestry something.
It's Family Forest Research Center. And it's like, it's at UMass, but a lot of the people are Forest Service people.
Yeah.
They also have a very cool, like, they have a public Zotero library that's linked from their website. So it's actually really easy to see like every single paper ever written on this topic. Like they,
Okay, what?
the
Did you
data summary
balance?
data from FIA is like publicly available on there. So it's not hard to be like, oh, what's out there on this topic, because it's all right there in the public Zotero library. And Brett also is the editor-in-chief of Small Scale Forestry, which publishes most of this work. So they're just like, they really have their finger on the pulse of the idea of like how people plan for succession of their land in the US.
Okay, that sounds like an interesting group to learn from. All right. So, okay, so for future agenda items, Kim, maybe you could put Andrew, or you can connect Andrew to your contact at Family Forest Research Center. Maybe we could bring them in and learn from them. Perhaps talk with them before we try to put together a decision tree. Your feedback or information you have, I guess, on the survey fatigue is interesting. Good to know. I hadn't heard that, but it's good to know.
I'm biased, Kim, because I'm a surveyaholic and take all the surveys.
Yeah, I think that you're maybe a unicorn. I don't know. Most people are not. We just had like one student actually have like a really great response rate, but she partnered with Audubon and she got like the Audubon logo on her mailer, and it was like a group of landowners that was participating in Audubon stuff. So I think people are taking the ones that are meaningful to them, but the random ones are harder.
All right. What else? Other ideas, other thoughts for next steps for the ERF outreach?
Question for Andrew. Do you think it would be most effective to just reach out to, like Kim was mentioning, Richmond and Essex? Or what is your sense of the best way to go about connecting with neighboring towns of value to collaborate with?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a formulated thought on that yet. I think that. I don't even know, I haven't looked into contacts for who to contact about that. Melinda might know more about that. I think that because it's those two towns. To me, out like just reaching out directly to each of them doesn't seem like a massive. I think that's doable,
Not
yeah,
left.
right. That fills that gap.
Does anyone else remember Darren Scribbs from Essex attending one of our meetings to have like a similar, sorry, my house is so noisy right now. To have a conversation about this, would he be the right person there?
I don't
Um,
recall that. I think it preceded my time.
I don't recall the name, but I do remember talking to someone from Essex at some point in time.
What's his last name?
In my head, it's Darren Scribbs, but like honestly, who knows how accurate that is? His name could be like David Smith.
Terrence Scripps.
Um,
I have to bring Nico to
So-
swim team. I might lose service. I apologize in advance.
so we've got Essex and, what's the other town? We do?
Richmond.
Richmond, yes.
Richmond.
Sorry, I thought Richmond was on that group, oh, they weren't there though.
They might be in the group, I haven't seen anyone from
Okay.
Richmond at the meetings, and I've been to 3, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is just talking about maybe talking to them, but hearing that they have a land trust that's not big in terms of funding, but sounds like they're working in detail with the landowners around. Makes me wonder about like, could we in the future not have to create a land trust but still get the benefits of it if we were like, hey, what if you expanded your land trust to be a Williston Richmond land trust and we could it could hold easements in both towns or something. Anyway, those are the types of things that I get excited about, but we got to connect with the right person over there.
All right. So what's your capacity looking like for the next couple of weeks?
I think it will be increasing.
Meaning you'll have more time?
Correct.
Okay.
That said, the month of July will be, a bit touch and go. Will be out for majority of 2 of the weeks in July. So that's just my schedule, but.
Good for you.
Well, yeah.
You need a break.
Mhm. All right, so for time frame, maybe what if we revisit this? So we'll see where the conversation goes in 15 minutes with CVU. Regarding reaching out to Essex and Richmond and then connecting with the Family Forest Research Center. Maybe look to revisit this with those groups in August or even early September.
I think that's a good goal. I think broadly, given this discussion and also the CVCP meeting. Williston has done a really good job in the past, and that's the sense I get from talking to those other towns. It's like, why are you like they're kind of joking, like, why are you asking us about this? You guys do such a good job at all of this. And I think that my sense, and this, I'm relatively new at this, so I might be a little naive, is that we have a conservation plan, our conservation commission, where some towns have a land trust, they might have some more in-depth relationships with the community. And that might be that seems like that's the place that we're trying to do better at. And so I think the sense is that we're trying to figure out how to best do that. And so conversations with Richmond and Essex, both about maybe trying to learn something from them through that information sharing, but also having some sort of coordination with them on. Long-term planning is part of that conversation as well. And then with the contact Kim was mentioning, similar kind of point, like what does that look like? What's the best way to go about doing that in the coming years? So all that to say, I think I agree with you that starting with talking with Essex and Richmond, and then trying to reach out to the Family Forest Research Center, and then from there, talking about a plan for outreach.
And there's a lot of information, like I just looked up the Essex Conservation Commission, they have a great website, a lot of information, how much money they get every year, $15,000, it's. So just looking at it, it might answer a lot of questions that we have,
Just looking at the
Maybe-
website.
yeah.
Maybe it was buried in there, Andrew, but one thing that I know has come up over and over again is we've got some tier 1 SWHA and some higher priority parcels for conservation along the Richmond border. And we don't have data included in those prioritizations related to what's on the other side of the border in Richmond. And so I think that's one of the things we want to clarify is like, we want to lift the fog on our border so
Yeah.
that we know, hey, if we're thinking about preserving a particular parcel, is it perhaps even more of a priority, even more valuable in terms of habitat and other services than we thought because of what's in Richmond on the other side? Or is it maybe not as, is there some factor we're unaware of because we're not paying attention to the plans for the parcels that are adjacent on the other side? I think Essex is a little bit less so because we're mostly divided by the river. So, it does matter, but it's not quite the same as like a forest block that spreads across the two towns.
Yeah, that's a good point, Reed, in that, it's not just looking at the strategies that those two towns are taking, or the approaches those two towns are taking, but looking at what if they've got potential projects along the border that we should at least be aware of. Or prioritize parcels along the border, like you said, South Burlington, it might be helpful to know what they have along the Williston border that's on their top 25 list.
This, I think, gets into some town plan kind of stuff with. We talked about ERF, talked about future iterations of the prioritization map. Being able to call out what's going on in other towns, having a neighboring town section on our conservation chapter. I think this would be a really good place for that. And so. Yeah, that's, I think that's more like information gathering just from me that I could report back. And then try to create something that's more polished for the town plan. That calls that out.
Yep, okay. Yeah, that's an interesting idea, and I'd be curious to hear more about that at some point, the neighboring towns section. All right, do we have more to talk about with? Sounds like we have an idea of what we want to talk about with Stan, is that right? So with Stan, we're gonna talk about how to shape this into a project that would be interesting for students. And then, and in that, work with the students to consolidate this information that we have into one place. And think about a plan to do outreach about, on Wild about Williston with other towns. Is that the gist of it?
Stan has a whole list of like, I don't remember how many we had on there in the end, maybe like 8 or 10 topics or
Okay.
or projects loosely defined. So I think the ERF or Wild About Williston type outreach is at least one of the things on that list. It may spread across more than one of the things on the list. And I know Stan's had conversations with multiple staff members at CVU, as well as talking with some of the middle schools about work that their students are interested in doing.
Oh, middle schools too, okay. Yeah, sorry, I have not been able to keep up with that email thread. All right, okay, great, well, it sounds like we have a good approach, or have an approach for Stan when he logs in. Do we want to take a few minutes and go through some of the other business? Do we have other business?
I guess I just on the ERF outreach, I'd like to clarify, just, sounds like one big thing is just doing some research on what other towns are doing, and that's something that I can do and pull together for maybe the late July meeting. I actually won't be here for that, but maybe early August. That I think would maybe coincide with trying to set up some sort of meeting with either a representative from their conservation commission or joint meeting or something. To have a conversation. I'm not sure if you wanna meet before then to talk about what I find, and then if we have questions, maybe we can prepare for them, things we wanna know more about. If that makes sense. I'm looking for a clear, kind of some clear
Yep.
direction on what you want from me.
Yep, so, if you wanna do the research ahead of time, I guess that would be great, and it would be, helpful, I agree, it would be helpful, I think, for us to have a conversation before we meet with the towns, so that we're at least. Somewhat educated about what they're doing going into the conversation. And then, that, I think, if you're not gonna be here for the end of July meeting, then, it seems like it would make sense for us to have that conversation in the first August meeting. And then try to set up conversations with representatives from the towns, either end of August, the second August meeting, or in September. And or if we can set up the agenda so that we have those in the same agenda where we talk about your research stuff at whatever, 7:15, and then they come on at 7:45 or 7:30, then that would work too, I think, I guess. We're also dependent on their availability.
Yeah. And summertime is,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's that factor as well.
Yeah, August can be difficult for parents with back to school and end of summer vacations and stuff.
And school's starting earlier now. And then similarly with the Family Forest Research Center. That could actually maybe even be something interesting for the Essex and Richmond folks to participate in too. I don't know what that would be like logistically to try and set that up, but.
Well, if they're interested in a joint meeting, we could propose that one of the agenda items is to see if somebody could come from that group so that they would get a chance to hear what we've been working on and what our goals for partnership are, and then also get the same information.
I can write Brett Butler an email because and just say like, hey, our town is thinking about this, and it's possible that other towns might be thinking about this. And would you have someone available that could maybe just like come and share recommendations for what you think we should do if we pursue trying to get this information? And that they often have postdocs, so it's possible even that he might not be available, but they might have somebody who's like really in it right now in terms of methods that might be available.
Love it, Kim.
Okay, so. I guess, next steps for you, Andrew, then I guess would be to reach out to Essex and Richmond. Find out if they'd be interested in connecting in with us for a meeting and maybe we could somehow pull off that same agenda. The Family Forest group. Do we have, so looking ahead, so where do we land? Are we not doing a July 3rd meeting?
That's where I've landed,
Okay.
based on our conversation last time, Gary, Dave and Laura were all just no, which is half that we already don't have a quorum.
Okay.
So
All right, so no July 3rd meeting, and then you're out July 17th with someone else. I don't know what else we have that needs to be on that agenda. Is there someone else from the town who could help with that meeting?
yeah, I don't know who's done it in the past. I would assume Matt or Melinda, if they're available. I need to coordinate on that. I think that ideally we'd have a town plan discussion, and maybe having a town plan discussion with Matt could be useful for you all.
Yep.
And we can talk more about that. But that's the goal.
That's pretty much it for,
Have coverage.
What was
yeah,
that, Reed?
so is the upcoming meeting, so, sorry, no, I was just gonna ask, I was just noticing it's almost 8. Was that it for the upcoming meeting stuff?
Well, I just want to make sure that we had. I guess, I want to get a feeling for what we have for a July 17th meeting. And there's nothing else like, what do you call it? Sorry, I'm really blanking this morning.
That's okay.
There's no other stuff we have to do on the July 17th.
The other can that we've just been, we haven't been kicking down the road, but that ideally we'd have a Winooski Valley Park District update by then. They've been quiet and mostly because we're waiting on Global Foundries. I'm getting to a point where I'm probably going to start just being a squeaky wheel for Global Foundries, because
Frequently.
I think Winooski Valley Park District is really busy right now. That's
This is their, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got a lot going on this time of year. Okay.
So,
Okay. All right, so for July 17th, you just let us know who will be staffing that meeting and. You know, maybe focus on town plan. We won't have any development reviews or anything like that.
it's hard to say.
Okay.
It's been a trickle lately.
Yeah.
And I don't know of any residential projects that will be coming in.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. We're still waiting for Stan to log in.
Just joined, actually.
He's here.
Okay, great.
Morning, Stan.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, Stan.
Hey,
Thanks for logging in, Stan. I'm Eric. I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission. And yeah, we were going to talk a little bit with you about potentially tapping into some CVU students to do some projects for the town.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, thank you for having me. You please tell me, does it make sense for me to give a couple minutes of context here so that we're all on at least some of this same page and get some ideas?
I think context would be great. Yes, you know, we have some ideas, but definitely context would be good to help shape those ideas.
Yeah, perfect. That makes sense. So I'll try to do this as concisely here as possible. I am on cup of coffee too, so I should be okay. So I'm over at CVU and I work for the school district as well. And this actually this actually probably started a few years ago, but it's really this year has kind of taken shape. I don't know, a few years back, teaching partner and I were doing these think tanks around the school district, talking to kids about learning in school. And I still remember a 7th grader in Shelburne at the time who said, you know, we're a really underutilized resource. And she's like, we
A seventh grader said that?
this was a
Wow.
seventh grader. This was a seventh grader. It has stuck with me ever since. She is off in college now, to show you again. It was 6-7 years ago. And she's like, we're capable of doing so much more than people ever ask us to do. And that has always resonated with me and stuck with me. And so fast forward to, I have worked in the school district as a teacher for years, as an instructional coach, as a learning coordinator. The last couple of years have been the only 2 years where I haven't had a classroom. And part of what I was kind of pushed to do this year was to start to think a little bit about some innovation and some different ideas, along with a variety of things. And so that's always stuck with me. And then I did some math in the beginning of the year, and when you look at CVU's got around 1,400 students. And when we did the math as far as how many hours they're actually in the school building or in school, then you add in an average of maybe an hour of work outside of the building at night, it's 2 million hours. And so when we started to think about the fact that we have about 2 million hours of student, focus and work, and workforce isn't the right word, but I think you know what I mean. It really was hitting a couple of us about, and at the end of the year, do we really have much more than a whole series of Google Classrooms and Google Documents that just kind of disappear? And why is it, going back to that seventh grader, could we be doing more? Why are we not making more of an impact kind of on the community or on the world with 2 million hours of work? We know that kids and teachers and parents, they want real, purposeful, authentic work. Everybody would say that that's what they want to do, or that they want to have that. And so we also know that we have a community and a world with plenty of needs and plenty of things that either need to be done or need to be figured out, or whatever it may be. And so it seemed to me that there was certainly a marriage there. And so that kind of sparked what at the time I was calling kind of the 2 million hour project. And it just was an idea, and I started to run it by some people and really think about how could we direct and focus learning experiences so that they have a greater impact on the collective, that they have an impact on the community, and that school isn't seen as just kind of a one-way street, where the community is generous enough to, support and sponsor schools, but that schools are used or seen also as a place that really serves the community, more than just an individual getting, their own education. So with that, and then kind of serendipitously, I had been meeting with a variety of different groups talking about this, from bigger, bigger organizations, such as, it was talking with places like Burton and Beta and Rhino Foods and Lake Champlain Chocolates, and then talking to people like the Vermont Green and a variety of others about how could we inject either some of your mission and do some partnering, and then was talking with some rec departments as well, and looking at all sorts of different types of people. And then Reed happened to reach out. I can't remember exactly when it was this winter, about connecting back with CVU in some way. And so that then that initiated kind of our first, I think, conversation. Reed, you and Troy and I think, met that first time. And then Reed and I have talked since then. Also, since then, this has been actually moved into the majority of my full-time job for next year. So what was a just kind of an aside thought and kind of little side project during the start of the year has now been moved into a major focus, not just for the high school, but also then kind of dipping into the the K-8s. At various levels, and kind of in ways that make sense to almost scaffold it up to being ready when you're in high school. So, and we have a group, but we just do not have the people power and the time to get some of these things done. And I remember at the time we talked about a couple of different things, just as an example. So since then, in the middle schools. So that's kind of what gets me here. We are looking to middle school style basis, but on us, and it's great in theory, but we got to figure out how you make sure you get the right partnerships, how you make sure it's a success for not only the kids, but obviously for the community. And so partnering with classes where the teacher would be part of like a class that would work on this. It's ninth grade. Our ninth grade core program has some science teachers where it could be a project over a kind of a set period of time. It could be something that was more as an anchor task throughout the year, and again, depending on natural resources and some of these other courses. And then, for instance, an AP environmental science course that's very interested in partnering. At the same time, we're also going to try to see if, and I'm not just talking with your projects, but with any, to have some kids through our Nexus project do it also, which is an independent learning. And so how it works. So and where we're going, kind of lens is, and thinking about potential partnerships.
Awesome. That is amazing to hear that you've been transitioning into doing this basically full time. That's great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that background. So Reed mentioned that you had some thoughts on what might be interesting town as well, and work that's been done here in Williston, and thoughts about advancing that work, both here in town, but also connecting with neighboring towns, several of which are within the CVU district. So I guess I'm curious to hear, what you've chatted about. Back here from the other
talk about the ones we talked about, or
as a commission, and went over it, but it's been a few weeks. Andrew, are you able to put up working with any particular student or class that wanted to try to take on one of these real world problems? And where we had landed at that point was we felt like we probably need, when working with students, we need somebody to play point from our team so that they have someone who can present the problem statement in a clear way at the beginning and then answer questions along the way, because we hope that they ask a lot of questions. Entire group or saying, well, we'll ask at the next meeting. That's just, it could hinder the kind of gum up the wheels, if you will. So so I was envisioning that we probably would want to assign, if one of these was going to take off with a class or a student independent study or something, we would want to assign somebody and say, for instance, Laura, is going to be your go-to person. She'll have an initial meeting with your class. follow-up questions, my name in the hat to be the guinea pig and be that point person. But we have a
great.
variety of skills across the commission. So depending on what project people are working on.
Sure.
and
Well,
from what
that,
commission.
I mean, and that sounds great. That's, you know, when I've spoken to some, tried to speak and look at some of these with a variety of some of the science teachers, again, from some 9th grade to some 12th grade. Spent a long time going over this yesterday with a Williston teacher who actually was going to bring her with me this morning, and then she had another meeting that popped up and couldn't come. But I know Colleen O'Brien's already done.
Oh yeah,
a number of. Yeah, that's as she said, yeah, and a number of things and interest because when I had been looking at this and what they had, and they are obviously looking through it at a more educated lens when it comes to the projects than I am. You know, it was really the same general questions all came up, and Reed, you already started to kind of come up to them about, you know, just that clear. What is the problem? What is exactly that needs to be done, or what needs to be figured out? And then for us to figure out what are the skills that need to then, you know, be focused on to do that. Is there, right, as you said, contact, guidance, and feedback throughout the process, like what that would look like. And then, you know, we were also, one of the things we're trying to figure out, like the timeline of some of these and priorities of some of these, and if some need to happen before others, or if some of these are kind of at the top of the list, or some of these are much smaller in size, and then almost that appropriate, from your expertise, kind of the appropriate ages or groups. You know, it's important to me that what we do, and I, again, with you and with all the other people we're talking to, is that we make sure to have projects that are accessible for all, that this is not a program for just a certain type of student or a certain group, that this is something that can be done for everyone. And maybe not every project works that way, but that the
mix,
the library
yeah.
of projects, so to speak, are you know, able to be accessible for all. So those are the things that we had been thinking about with a lot of the ones that we have here and been talking about. So yeah, I'm interested to hear just about you know, more about what you're thinking through those, and if there are ones here that are really, you know, priorities, so to speak.
Eric, I'd like to turn to the rest of the commission and see whether, let's start with the question about prioritization, whether there's anything on here that seems like a top priority, and then hear from Stan on where that we might target that.
Yep, how it might be shaped for a student
Mhm.
project. So, all right, so other members of the Conservation Commission, what do you think? What do you see on this list that you would be worth advancing to the, or consider working on?
Can I just ask a quick question, Stan? What's the time frame that they would have to work on this? On what part of the year? Like summer, fall, spring?
Nice to see you. Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, there's an element of this that you are currently in the plane while it's being built. So, you know, we have that. I think right now what we'd be looking at is I know that we could get and able to go, you know, more or less from the fall. As far as some classes, you know, it's that the timeline's different. I know Heather with her AP environmental, she's looking at something that could go a couple of things that could maybe go throughout the year that they could be focused on, and that may take longer, or maybe it'd be a series that would work out. Again, basically spending the bulk of not all the parts of the course, but having it injected into the course throughout the year. I know some of the course teachers had talked about having it again be something that would maybe be staggered throughout, versus others. The core has worked on a impact project at the end of the year that's been evolving, and that these seem like really good ideas, which would mean it would be something more towards the spring. The other teachers were really kind of open. I know, you know, Colleen O'Brien, and as many of you may know, like in some of the other middle schools, we're looking for things to do more either consistently or, throughout the school year. So I think it's a variety of options. I would not say, I could not say any certainty, for instance, have been articulated to kids yet and gone out in future summers. I think probably.
Good. I don't think we'd be ready to start.
Okay. I think future going down, to get credit for, and they get whatever through school. That shouldn't happen to be just because the calendar stops. So I see that in the future being an absolute. And as far as next year, I see it that the individual projects could be pretty much started, I think, whenever. We've got to work out a couple of things on my end as far as who's an advisor at school. I can do a lot of the point person and be pulling in an appropriate kind of science teacher as someone to help guide me. And but that's nothing you need to worry about.
Yeah, that's helpful. But it's mostly the senior year, at least for
I mean, we've got ninth and then environmental natural resources, excuse me. And so there could be a definite mix. And then the independent projects, probably for it's to start would be 10th, 11th, or 12th. I think we don't think we would start a ninth grader with an independent project probably right off the bat. But certainly the rest of the gang.
Great, thanks.
I'll throw one out, Eric, that jumps off the page to me, and that is we've got a lot of beaver activity in Williston, Stan, and there's this one on here about how it's likely to impact the haired waterway. And that just seems like it has a lot of different directions in terms of scientific research. We have some experts that from Vermont Fish and Wildlife, as well as we've got a local filmmaker who's making a film about it right now, and has been interviewing people and translating that into the right signage, finding good locations for the signage, and then maybe even manufacturing the signage. I don't know if you guys have like a shop class that does metalwork and stuff, but actually creating the physical signage and installing it would be, all different skill sets or types.
I thought the same thing when looking at that one about there's not just the design of signs, but do we actually make it? And we have, some of you may or may not know that Burlington Pre-Tech is moving into CVU next year.
Wow.
I shouldn't say
Okay.
they're moving a satellite, basically, campus, and they're not moving, but they're adding a satellite campus to Pre-Tech. It'll be run through Burlington, but we have, I think, is it 20 or 40? I guess it's 29th graders I know that are going into that program. And then I don't know the number of sophomores that are taking it yet. But so just that alone, we're going to have access to expertise. We're going to have access to even some more material and some more opportunities or partnerships with some things that did not exist. Well, have never existed at CVU until next year. So, leaning into that part about the making and the doing some of these things, I think we're going to have more access to some of that than we've even had.
13 informational and instruction around our trail system as well.
I have another question for Stan. Is it possible for students to work in groups on different aspects of a project?
Yeah, I think, yes.
Okay.
I think that would be,
that would help.
That would probably be the class. I imagine that's going to have to be a goal, just rather than trying to have 24 people answer the same, you know, that divide as far as the individuals and like the smaller groups in our Nexus program, which is some of the kind of student-based projects that would be perfect kind of partnerships. And again, these are some of the systems and structures that I've got to figure out how to build. We're looking at creating almost a, a think tank within the school so that any of these groups would have a group that they could go to pitch and to do that throughout. So those are some of the systems and structures that I can't say we have them yet, but we have a lot of things that are kind of in place to work on those very things. But I think that would be a key part for me, Gary, was that they also start to just experience the you know, words and then the challenges of having to stay coordinated and on message. And so I think that would be an important part.
Because I could see some of these projects like the Beaver, you know, there'd be a person that could do kind of background. Why are Beaver here? Why are they detrimental and positive? And then how do you manage them and a plan? I don't know.
Well, and what I love about just even that is what at first glance seems like such a simple project, right? I'm making a slide about beavers, you know. I mean, a kid, most 16-year-olds would be like, all right, well, what do I do tomorrow? But I think like, right, getting at all of the stuff that goes into it. We have a RISE program at school, which is the last couple of weeks. It's this kind of experiential, the different types of learning. The school has stopped, and it's, I don't know, like an old college J term almost, but at the end of the year and a year in studies. And mine was about innovation and purpose in business. And we traveled to different businesses every day, and we talked to them about how they promote innovation and curiosity in their business, and then how they blend mission and business. And again, from places such as Beta to the Vermont Green to Shelburne Farms to J Skis and a bunch of others to Hula, and all of them, the kids were just so shocked. It's just in so many ways of how long projects took, the iteration piece, which school does not always, you know, school, it's often you're assigned at Monday, you're supposed to be an expert on it by Wednesday, or at least in their mind, that's the case. And, so that iteration piece, and then, you know, the groups, this, you know, this kind of aligns perfectly with some of that learning and some of the goals that we would certainly have.
I was thinking the other one that just I think would be interesting for CVU students. Number 7 says web content and public outreach, but they could actually do a lot of their own research projects with No Mow May, Raise the Blade, Rewild Your Lawn, and pollinators, because there are pollinator gardens that people are putting in a lot of places, and it's, you know, it's kind of interesting to see, you know, the difference between what is using your lawn. Lawns can be important for, you know, people to be able to, you know, play on or whatever. But if you take a part of your lawn or in town, a pollinator garden, and look and see what's coming, because all sorts of animals throughout, and it's a year-long thing. When the lawn grows up, so many more insects are using what's coming in, and then animals are using it, birds are using it, deer are using it. All the way through the winter when insects use the blades of grass or the stalks of different plants to live in. That can just be a really interesting thing to look at. And I think it's interesting for people too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could be great. Again, I think again, for the high schooler, for any of us, but for the high schooler to look at something they have always looked at, but to suddenly see it through a different lens and through a different kind of maybe purpose and possibility would be, again, to your point, really engaging and kind of interesting for them.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great.
I can add one too. I think the trail work, not necessarily the erosion and stuff, but understanding the use of trails, the different maybe some monitoring of use, so that that would be really helpful to us to know, you know, what connections might be useful to other trails and who's using it, how much resources should we put behind it, that kind of thing. It's kind of another one of those multifaceted things that
Mhm.
could be a team project.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kim.
Oh, great. Sorry, I'm at outdoor swim practice of one of my kids in Essex. I agree with Gary, and I think it's like monitoring trail use and doing trail intercept surveys is a thing that is great for making management decisions, but you need somebody to kind of like park out at random intervals at trailheads and like count people and chat with them. And so if there is in the future, you said maybe summer availability, it would be very cool to like plan it over the course of a year, maybe like multiple classes or a combination of classes and projects, and see like what people are doing in different seasons and how does that change and what are the uses and what does it mean to people to be able to use them, and just have the students chat with folks that they see. I think that could be cool for like multiple groups to contribute to one project, and it could actually really help us understand our trail use in a meaningful way.
They could give a survey and then you have to answer it.
No
Right?
surveys, just like a clipboard with I'll help design it. But
I know. No, I mean,
Yeah.
it could, by the students asking the questions, they're gonna get
Yes.
answered, not thrown
yeah,
away.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There could also be, it would be the legit way to do it is like, yeah, you have somebody with a clipboard asking questions, and then you also have a QR code that people can scan in case someone's like, I don't have time right now, right? So then they don't have an excuse. But I think I think people would talk with high school students more
Yeah.
than like a park employee or something like that.
Mhm. Great.
Yep.
Simon and I did a little bit of that this past fall as part of the town plan, and I think that this, like you're saying, connects really well with our conversations about trail connectivity and also the locations of trails in town. And I think understanding too, like who is using our trails. I mean, Suckerbrook is a great example of people who are commuting that don't live in Williston, but just drive through that will stop. And I think that data would be really helpful.
I like the idea of asking about trail connectivity and access, because, you know, just because somebody's walking a particular trail doesn't mean that that's the ideal trail for them. So finding out what would the ideal trail look like for them, you know, would it be level? Would it be, you know, up to a lookout? And then also location, you know, where do you live in town? Do you come here just because it's the only thing available in your area, or would you, or do you have options close to your home? Because I know we're looking at, Stan, we're looking at things like equity of our trail networks and access for all people. So that's an interesting kind of humanities lens
Yeah.
to look at something like trail stewardship.
I'd also love to know, like, what does it mean for you, right? So like there might be some people who are commuting, and then there's some people who are like recreating for fitness. It's the way some people spend time with their families. For some people, it might be like artistic
my dog.
inspiration or like even like spiritual experiences, right? Like there's all kinds of, you know, trails, parks, protected areas. They mean all different things to all different people. And it would just be cool to know what needs we're meeting by providing these areas.
Yeah, what a great question. But yeah, and again, what's so fun just listening to all of you, right? That what on paper seems like just a kind of quick yes this, but just all the depth that goes into all of these, and I think that's and the nuance and the possibilities, which again I think is part of that real learning that's at the heart of this. There's the learning of be it the science and the environmental piece or the humanities, whatever it is, but there's also this just learning of how do you break a project down, how do you ask the right questions, how do you figure all this what needs to be asked. So this is great.
Eric, is there anything that jumps out at you from the list?
Only other one that's on there that I want to bring up is the riparian planting health checks. I've been thinking about the time frame, and I guess if the students were able to get out and do that in the early fall, while the trees still have leaves on them, just for their own, so that. Or in the late spring, when the trees are budding out, maybe they could easily identify the trees that have not survived.
Or even trees that need to be freed up because they're getting too big for their plastic trunk protectors and stuff.
Yep.
Where would that site be? I don't remember.
Well, we have several here in town. There's Brennan. There's the one over at Brennan Woods. There's one off of right up here, with the intersection of Oak Hill Road.
It's one by Southridge, at the bottom of the
Yes,
hill.
sorry,
headed,
I said Brennan Woods. I meant Southridge. Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Two that I was thinking of. Not a huge.
Yeah, we have
lift.
kind of a few of them. Allenbrook School, there's some plantings along the brook there. Talcott Road, both two locations along Talcott Road, there's plantings.
And then if they wanted to, do some other work in this, in the winter or whatever, maybe identify other locations, either town owned land or conserved areas that could use plantings.
I will throw, just as I was thinking as you were talking, I will just throw this out, nothing to be figured out now, but because we'll be about a year away. But as I was mentioning my RISE program, and this is a 2-week program at the end of the school year where kids either do a full day thing or they do a morning and an afternoon session. And those sessions are about 2.5 hours. So there could be some really interesting partnerships. Like if there were things that a really concentrated 2-week project with 20 kids and an advisor would be going forward, or a full day project. So again, I just to throw in kind of the back of your mind for next year, this RISE will continue. And so we're always looking for more and more kind of real and engaging things for that program as well. So again, just as some of you were talking about, it was occurring to me that some of these might be, at times there might be things that would be good for that too. So
I think one that could be good for that, Stan, and is number 6, mapping the Tree Island or Abazima plantings. There's hundreds of trees have now been planted, and we've reached a point where the intention for this area by Allenbrook School is to turn it into an urban forest park. And it would be highly valuable because it's immediately next to the growth center at Taft Corners. So it would serve as outdoor recreation opportunity for many, many, many people who can't otherwise get to the other parks easily. And in the short term, there's volunteer work been done by my father, Chapin Kaner, to lead groups of volunteers to plant trees. And Gary's program at UVM also has a test plot there for some trees. But we've reached our limits in terms of being able to track. So we can only track so many trees. Where did they come from? How old are they? Have they survived? Are they protected properly? Which types of protection are working and not working, so that we can do the proper types of protection. And so what my dad has said is he feels like we're at the point where what we need is an interactive, like a GIS type layer type map that students could go around, take the location of the different trees, make a database that says these are the varieties and their origins and their age and stuff like that. And then in the future, groups of volunteers from the public even could go out and check on them or something. But in order to do that, they have to have the inventory, they have to have the locations so that they can go and do it more independently. That sort of thing.
Yeah, you're right. I can see that perfectly with a RISE. I can see that through both lenses. So that's great. Thank you.
Stan, do these concepts all seem like they could be scoped for student projects?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, first I'll say I really appreciate you, squeezing me into the meeting because this is much of my work now. And for instance, over the summer and into next year is starting to meet and create, I don't know what the right word is, but this library of projects and ideas that the community needs so that then it'll be upon me to try to partner, classes and groups of kids with the right client, so to speak, so that it is, we want to make sure that these are the appropriate match and based on interest, based on what kids are looking at, what classes are doing. And so, no, this has been perfect, and it's been great to hear about. Just even to pushing my thinking of just all the levels that fall in underneath each of these, and then going back to Gary's point, like really the structures of how you get those groups coming together. And so, the structure system piece will be one of the challenges that's going to be exciting for me to deal with, along with obviously the real exciting part is coming up with all these projects and the possibility. I don't know what you all think. To me, it's such a natural fit. Like I said, we have 2 million hours of work happening and 1,400 kids looking for real authentic things to do in a community that needs them. So it seems like could be a good marriage here. I just have to, I guess I just have to work on the wedding vows.
No, yeah, now you have the work to do, right? The
Right,
legwork
right.
to do.
Right, but having projects in mind makes that work so much easier because I can conceptualize it so much more with an actual, like if I break down beaver signage, like I can think so much more about the pieces that are needed. So it's great for me to be able to think in the practical versus just the theoretical.
And what does the rest of the commission think? I sort of feel like we probably wouldn't want to work on more than 2 of these concurrently at any given point because with our bandwidth,
Agreed.
with our
Agreed.
bandwidth,
Maybe even one to
what
start.
like one at a time would be kind of ideal for us. Like if you were like, okay, I've got a group in the fall that wants to work on this project, we'd be like, great, let's pen that in and let's start planning on something for the spring.
Yep.
Just because we want to make sure that we hold up our end of the deal, which is, we want to bring some education to the team and do proper framing of the problem as well as the impact that their work will have on Williston's community. And we don't want to, kind of throw something over to them and then not support properly.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to say, Stan, I don't know how you sell this to the students, but I'm sure if you wanted, one of us could come in and give a brief description of 2 or 3 different projects to the students, just in case they have questions you can't answer, or whatever system that might help you.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yes, I think that's essential. They would have much more than 2 or 3 questions I couldn't answer. So, yeah, I think that would be great. And again, just selfishly, having somebody, having one of you just gives it a level of authenticity and real world that I can't give it because I'm a member of people. And so I think that's a great a great piece. And I do think one of the things I'll think about is like, so I know if the 9th grade core program or 9th grade core, for instance, team is interested in a spring, like that means they could have 75 kids working on something, right? Versus a small group of 3 that are in Nexus and then realizing what that projects might, our numbers, or Heather Morley's AP Environmental Science class wants to work on something and she can really kind of take the lead on a lot of the work and the science. Then that also might free up, wouldn't need as constant a contact with one of you as an independent project would, or things like that.
For sure.
So, I've got to play with, if we have a person who can really take a big lead in it from the science standpoint, then that maybe changes one thing versus I've got 3 11th graders who are really interested in doing this, but we really need to, access read all the time or whatever it might be.
Great. Unfortunately, I have to leave today, you guys, but thanks, Stan, for helping us through this, and I think it's going to be a great addition to our work.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you.
Good to see
All
you.
right, thanks, Gary.
Gary?
Bye.
Then the other one, thanks, Stan. The other one was, you know, this environmental reserve fund work that I think we've been talking about a little bit. Or you've been talking about with Reed rather, and working with the students to consolidate information that we have in multiple places into one place on a website. And then, working with the students to do outreach about these efforts to other towns to help them understand what we're doing in Williston and help us understand what they're doing and recruit landowners potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that seems like, again, without diving too much, like that seems right. What's really great is that's a whole different skill set from a kids that we're looking for, or from some different things, and maybe a
It gets a lot more into like town government type space, Dan, because it's like that would require the students to figure out how do towns operate, how does land become developed or conserved, what are the different pathways, and then what are the priorities for landowners, and how do you approach landowners in a way that's not threatening, to say, hey, you know, the town has identified that your land is valuable, potentially valuable to conserve, and wants to partner with you on that if that's something you're interested with, is basically the landing approach there. It's kind of it's a touchy issue, surprisingly a little bit to me, but it's a touchy issue in terms of spending taxpayer money. Is one thing, as you know from the school budget stuff recently, but then also people's sense of ownership and control of their land and how they use their land. It's a big deal to people.
You know, I think, Reed, what you were just doing right there, it takes me back to Gary's point about somebody talking about what I think would be really interesting. We get closer and start to maybe hone in on where I might start, is really interesting to think about these projects, but the questions that you will have to encounter, and helping like a kid hearing like that series of questions right there, like they certainly would not come up with that by just looking at, you know, web content around this. Like, and so I think that there's something really engaging and that would feel exciting for, again, the right group of kids, to the right one, but that or the class, but hearing it through those questions, you're going to have to figure out how does this. I think that's a really interesting, and I think that'll be an engaging kind of entry point for a lot of them.
Yeah, so
Can
for
I
your
ask
notes,
it
it's four. Oh, sorry, Kim.
No, I was just gonna say, like, what I'm curious to know, what you perceive their level of sophistication around, like if we gave them one question, like if we parked students at a trailhead and we said, hey, we want you to ask people what this area means to them, and then when someone says something interesting, feel free to like ask a follow-up question or ferret it out. Or like if we gave them one question to ask landowners, and it's like, what are you thinking about what's going to happen to your land long term? And then let them ask follow-up questions. Like, is your sense that some students are sort of sophisticated and curious enough that they would then like come up with a bunch of follow-up questions and like really get stories out of people? Or is your sense that we'd have to make a like kind of like a script and like write out what the follow-up questions might be? Because I'm asking because I can see people often love to chat about their land or the things they do every day, and they often love to chat with young people. And so I'm thinking, like, if we had some really curious students that would come up with follow-up questions on their own, then some of these could just be like getting stories from people, and I bet they would be really rich stories. Like the example Reed was just talking about made me think, like, that's a great, like, will you just tell me about your land and like what you're thinking about it for the future
On the list. You can't see the list, probably can, but number 5 says
I can see
ARCD
it.
interviews. Okay, yeah, that one. I was about to say 4 and 5 are kind of connected, because a lot of the parcels that are valuable for conservation are in the agricultural rural district, Stan, and A couple interviews were done in 2022 by some UVM naturalist students, but a lot more connectivity between the town and rural landowners is required to make any sort of progress.
Yeah, and I think, I would love to say right now, oh, of course, the high school students would be brilliant at that, and there might be some who naturally would be, but I think what it focuses on is that would be part of my job on the CVU end, would be working with either the teacher who's working with those kids or working with those kids that are more independent to prep and to practice and to do some of that stuff. We would and so whatever part of project breakdown, but if it's asking questions, unfortunately, I don't think that's something kids are asked to do all that much in school, is to generate. They answer questions are there, but that generating and so that would be one of the skills. I would anticipate there would be some who would be really good right from the start, others who would be nervous from the start, but that would be part of that process that we would be working on our end was, how do you listen? How do you ask a follow-up question? How do you, engage? How do we brainstorm some follow-up questions with some ahead of time to scaffold it and to go? So I think you'd have the range, but I think that that would be on us to be working on that prior or as that was going on to instruct and have that be some of the learning. So I think the answer would be they'd be all over the place, but that would be one of the absolute key
pull them together
that we would be working on, right? I mean, that would be one of the hopes, is that we would practice. I could see them having to have practice interviews with AI. They're on ChatGPT. They're having a practice interview and having to practice, how do I ask questions, how do I ask follow-ups, and ahead of going there. So that would be one of the skills, and that's but I think that's a great skill.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just say like one more time, I think people love to talk about their land and they love to talk with young people, and so I would just put a plug in for that. Like, if you think that's good skill development for them, then I bet we'd get some cool stories that would be useful to us. And the challenge is like data analysis, but I probably can find some undergraduate researchers or something to comb through stories.
Stan, I'll send you a link to some existing story map interviews that were done with some rural landowners, to give you an example.
That would be great.
All right, so we have about 10 minutes left on our meeting time here. Thanks, Stan. Thanks so much for all of your time here and feedback on this. Is there more, what do you see as next steps for us anyway on this, engaging with you on this?
I think I need to kind of go through all of this, and as I'm wrapping up this school year now, I can really jump into this as a major part of my focus. Over the summer, I think I've got to go through these and start to piece together more connections with teachers and classes about when they could start or what their interest is, and take more specifics now that I kind of have them.
Yep.
The ideal would be that, near the beginning of the year, next year, that maybe we were able to connect again. And at that point, I would ideally have a teacher with me, and maybe it's I could see that as the connection to figure out what we might want to start with. But I think over the course of the summer, it's upon me to compile all of this and the other projects that we're talking with people around, and then to start to think about how to get that either matched through. I should have a much better idea by the fall if it's a ninth grade group wants to do something throughout the year, if they want to do something in the spring, if they want to, and the same with some of the other class. You meet throughout the whole year?
We do twice a month. Yep.
So, I would see like an August, kind of meeting right before the school year gets rolling, would probably be ideal. Okay, yeah, probably the 21st, because I'll have everybody back and going there. That would be a great time to, and it could probably, I mean, realistically, nobody's starting this the first day of their class. I don't think so. I could also, push into the beginning of September if need be. But yeah, that August 21st seems like it would be a perfect time to reconnect, and I could have a much more, I don't know, kind of defined. Here's what we'd love, or here's a group that's ready to roll at X time. If
Awesome.
that's all right. Well, thank you. I know you're limited on time, and I went way too long, but I appreciate it. These are exactly the kind of things that we're looking to get involved in and to do. And I think could hopefully, if I can get my act together, could be community.
Yeah, get these comments around, what our vision is or scoping or whatever, just feel free to reach out and we can certainly talk with you offline too.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks,
take
Dan.
care.
Nice to talk to you all. All right. Take care.
You too. All right, so that leaves us 8 minutes to talk about the town plan, rural land use and subdivision design and conservation topics. I missed the "and" there.
Yeah. So that's okay. I think that conversation was very valuable, and I actually don't have a whole lot on town plan. Right now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the format of involving you all in this. Last meeting, we talked about having a SharePoint. Basically, we have a SharePoint that is accessible on the website. But my idea is to be giving you, there's a reviewing setting where you can
Privilege,
basically,
yeah.
you can comment and suggest. I think ideally it would just be commenting to try to keep things organized, but well, yeah, that's where I'm at with that. The chapters, those 2 chapters are, I'd say, not where I want them to be yet before we talk about them. And last meeting, Dave had talked about, he had said he thinks commenting at like an outline phase would be really helpful, as opposed to a written phase.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the format that my group's chapters are right now anyway. And so my goal is to have those more complete before you guys all take a look through. And last meeting was very helpful to talk about the feedback you did with Simon as well. And last few hours.
Our responses.
It goes through and lists many of the main topics that you all were commenting on. And frankly, the level of detail in your comments are detailed than a lot of our other outreach was. You also are more in tune with what's going on in town and et cetera. So it's very useful. I can share just so you guys can see it too. So my goal is to incorporate a lot of this into the check what we.
Yeah, Aaron, not reviewing the outlines today. I read the outlines, Andrew, and they look like they're headed in a good direction, but I just know we have so much detail from our conversations with Simon that if you're able to integrate that first, it would be a better use of our time.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm not sure if that will happen before, those will be complete before the next July meeting. That's my goal. Whether it's before that meeting or at that meeting, actually giving you the assignment, like, hey, okay, we're gonna go into these and then talk about them at the next meeting. I think it's going to be a conversation that we're continuing, but I think the timeline is going to work out as far as our whole drafting, because the big picture here is that we're talking about these drafts with the planning commission and trying to get as much down on paper as we can right now. And then eventually it goes to the select board and we have those conversations about what so that's nice, but yeah, that's kind of the big picture.
Will it be in the outline form when it goes to the select board?
No,
No, it will be in final form.
it'll be a draft, and I think
Okay.
it's. Our chapters aren't fully written yet.
Mhm.
Melinda's, for example, are pieces of art. I don't know if anyone knows Steve Shepherd, but
Yes.
she and Steve have really been doing a really good job, and the goal is to have a more written form.
Mhm.
That said, Matt also talks a lot about, and I agree with his assessment of a lot of the really good town plans are the ones that don't have a lot of text.
Mhm.
And instead are just very clear, concise, and list off actions, goals. And so I think that's the ultimate objective. And so. I guess that my way of getting to that is maybe a little different than what Melinda and Steve have been doing. So
They're more
yes.
long form, it's fine. Everybody has their style.
Exactly. But so I'm trying to get all the information in that I think is valuable, and frankly, like, I'm learning this as I go too. And so it's a challenge, but eventually my goal is to lean on you a little bit to have some feedback, and just want to have something that I'm ready to share with you when that time comes. And so that's my timeline right now.
Okay.
Any feedback on commenting, if people are interested, if people think they'll be able to take time outside of the meeting to take a look through these chapters, that's kind of what I'm looking for with our 2 minutes left.
Mhm.
I know I can commit to going through and commenting on all the sections for the yellow team.
Yeah, I'd happy to do that too. Just so I clicked on the link for the SharePoint. Do I need to log in to be able to comment on
You
it?
clicked on the link for the SharePoint.
From the link that you gave us in the agenda, ended
Right.
up on the Williston 2050 page.
Okay.
Right now, we only have the read-only rights, Eric, so Andrew will have to update us to be reviewers.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is
Yes.
Yeah.
what needs to be done to allow us to comment.
So I'll send you a link that gives you that access, and it's anyone with this link can.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that will be your pass key in, and the one challenge I think could happen here is that we actually won't be able to see exactly who the person is that is commenting. A
Okay.
small detail, I think, if you write your name before you comment, it's
Okay.
but
Okay.
that's the format, and I think everybody seems like behind that. It's a good idea.
Sounds good. And so for today, we had planned to look at rural lands and subdivision design and conservation areas. I also see working landscapes on the webpage.
Mhm.
Is that one, should we be looking at that one too, or no?
No, so, yeah, I will send you a message when I'm like, all right, press go.
Okay.
And it's complicated with the fact that I won't be here in July.
Mhm.
And we're kind of skipping the next meeting, so. Maybe some feedback on whether or not you think me sending you that before that meeting is.
Before the July 17th meeting?
Yeah, give you some time, and then maybe ideally Matt would be staffing this and you could have a conversation about feedback, and that way I can also take that recording and I can include that in the chapters.
Yep.
After the fact. So.
Okay.
I like the
That
target of,
sounds-
is it July 17th? Is that the next meeting?
Yeah, I would say probably a week before that is my deadline of having that to send out to you, at the latest.
And that's so that we're talking about the working landscapes chapter or all three?
Talking about, the first two, I think is good. And really the conservation chapter is where I'm interested in. I think as I work
Not the
more on it.
watershed, not the watershed health chapter?
Not yet, I haven't even gotten there.
Eric's already eyeing it.
So for now,
Yeah.
I would love your feedback on watershed health too. Yes, so. We'll do it piecemeal as we go to here is that you'll see as you read through eventually that a lot of them have a lot of overlap. And so, that's another thing that the planning staff will be doing, and we actually have an intern from UVM who's helping with, kind of consolidating those things and trying to map them all out.
So you're getting your ideas down, and then are you gonna look at the old town plan and see what's missing? Or just rewrite the whole thing?
We're writing from scratch,
Mhm.
We're rewriting it. We're not taking, the previous town plan,
Okay,
really. But yes, you are correct. Trying to get everything down and then having that kind of, what are we missing? What needs to be pared down? Where are we repeating ourselves? Where does
Mhm.
this topic make sense to be put in the
Okay.
plan?
Mhm.
It is a massive Venn diagram with lots of
Yeah.
overlap.
That's a big
Um,
job.
It's, I think it's really thought provoking, and you kind of go down a rabbit hole at times. Where you start thinking about something that's like, okay, what are the implications of that? And,
Mhm.
it's been a challenging, humbling, but good experience so far, and I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it goes without saying, but you're gonna share this Conservation Commission summary from our Google thing when you send out the commenting link.
Yes, this and there's a Excel document.
Okay. Awesome.
I gotta sign off, folks.
Me
Yep.
too.
We too.
All right.
Yep. All right.
I
Thanks,
gotta go
everyone.
See
vacation.
y'all later.
Um,
Have a great vacation.
Yeah.
Thanks.